So next, let's talk about Alex Caruso making his way to Oklahoma City in place of Josh Giddey. And where I want to start is let's talk about Caruso, and then let's talk about the team and implications coming out of that. Last year with Chicago, averages 10, 4, and 4. Notably to me, that was in under 8 field goal attempts a game. Obviously not chucking a lot. And of course, everybody knows he is an incredible defensive presence as far as the wing goes, making all defense second team this past year. Incredible wing defender, known for it. His offense is really the interesting piece. Something that I haven't heard many people really talk about is not only did Alex Caruso play at the small forward more than 50% of the time last year with the Bulls, the defensive on-off was significantly better with him at the 3 than the 2, and even more so the defensive points per possession, the measurement on-off, it was in the 81st percentile. So when he was playing the small forward, the Bulls were in the 81st percentile defensively, but his offensive numbers at the 3 compared to the 2, basically the same trend but flipped on its head, which makes sense. I mean, matched up with bigger guards, he's just not going to be as effective when you think about offensively. But the defensive thing is really, really interesting. They were in the 88th percentile in generating turnovers when he was on the court playing at the small forward position. I wonder if the defensive stuff with bigger guys handling the ball, all of that, I just thought that was really interesting. So not only was he playing the small forward position more than half the time last year, they had a better defense with him playing at the small forward position. And I think turnovers were driving a lot of that. But again, the offensive stuff is where it gets a little tricky. He had the highest three-point percentage of his career at 41% last season on the highest volume of attempts. Maybe it has to do with the complexion of the team shifting. We're all aware of Zach LaVine's not ideal fit with the Bulls. Other guys getting more opportunities to shoot the ball, get involved on the offensive end, yada, yada. I mean, that's just the exact kind of trend you really want for a team like Oklahoma City, where you really want to present as much downhill pressure as possible to unlock your perimeter shooters, who are all ice cold, as we all saw. They're just really, really good shooters all over that team. In addition to that, he was only 44th percentile in percent assisted on scores, which I think is important to note because OKC's assist percentage as a team last year was bottom 3rd, and that's because every single guy on the team has to be able to put the ball on the floor and propel their system of drives and kicks very, very similar to Boston. I was talking about this last year. Schematically, nobody talks about this stuff in terms of frameworks, right? When you think about brands of basketball and styles of attacks, I was talking about Oklahoma City showing very clear parallels to Boston all year. What it means is they don't generate a lot of assists because everybody has to be able to put it on the floor and make their shots. In order to get credit for an assist, the guy receiving the pass can only take 2 dribbles. Most of the time, you're giving the ball up to a guy who's gonna, take it, pump fake, maybe sidestep, maybe get around somebody else and put the shot up, whatever. So in perpetuity, there actually aren't that many technical assists, but everybody's touching the ball every single play. So I just say that all to say, Alex Caruso is pretty used to not getting a ton of technical assists as is. So I just like that indicator for how well he's going to just gel in OKC's system. Moving over to Oklahoma City now, I'm going to preface this by saying I really don't think Oklahoma City is done, and this whole thing with the draft and what they're able to pull out of it, we will see. Very, very interesting lineup. Obviously now it's a fever pitch. Everybody's referring to the Oklahoma City and its parallels with Boston, and that's all well and good. The issue is with Oklahoma City is they don't have a Jason Tatum. I have been a little bit outspoken about the media coverage of Tatum when it comes to putting him on this pedestal of a top X player. Pretty much the most undisputed metric of superstardom is when the game is on the line, can you generate a good shot for yourself and hopefully make it, or can you generate a good shot for a teammate, help your team succeed in those moments? I don't think Jason Tatum has proven he's able to do that. I say that to say this past year, Jason Tatum demonstrated probably his ideal role on a winning team, which is not necessarily initiating every single play, able to finish plays very effectively when it is opportune within the flow of the offensive system with movement, where he's able to take advantage of certain mismatches, misdirections. And then, of course, on the defensive end, the guy's enormous. I mean, he's an absolute specimen. He's like 6'9", strong as fuck. He's going to take, really great assignments. And then this past year, he was matched up with the other team's bigs in order to free up Al Horford and help it so he wasn't easily able to get pulled up to the point of attack and the pick and rolls. And we all saw what happened in Dallas. So what I'm calling the power forward position now is the most valuable role and position in the NBA right now. I don't think that was more apparent than this past year's playoffs, the air quote top teams in the league, where you had Denver's Aaron Gordon, maybe one of the most versatile defenders in the sport, and obviously is very, very bought into his role offensively, shadowing Jokic, always like a planetary system, just following and watching everything he's doing. And then you have the PJ Washington acquisition for Dallas, park him in the corner, give him the confidence to knock down shots. I mean, he was basically the leading scorer for Dallas when they played Oklahoma City, because Oklahoma City challenged Dallas to trust him to make all those corner threes, and he did. And he led the team in scoring 2 out of the 6 games. And then you have Karl-Anthony Towns with Minnesota, who presents a swath of issues, especially when his mind's right and he's locked in. And we saw the flashes, albeit pretty late against Dallas, where have a guy that big able to stretch the floor that well, but also put it on the deck and finish at the rim when the outside shots aren't falling. Even able to make those quick passes pretty close into the rim, led his own team in lob assists to Rudy Gobert last regular season. I say all that to say, these are the other top-tier contending teams in the Western Conference. And right now, I don't even know who Oklahoma City would start at the power forward position without Giddey. That is why I completely understand schematically why Oklahoma City wanted to acquire Caruso for its pesky perimeter defensive, ferocious guards on the perimeter. It didn't solve some of the latent issues I think most of us were aware of last year when it came to not just the rebounding. Who on this team is going to match up with Karl-Anthony Towns, Aaron Gordon, PJ Washington? All three of those guys are used dramatically differently in the systems to which they reside in, and each present pretty stark differences as far as threats go, particularly on the defensive end if they're your opponent. J-Dub is a tremendous two-way wing, probably one of the best that nobody wants to talk about. I personally see him as a young, budding Jaylen Brown, honestly. I could very well see that sort of trajectory for him, but you're going to wear him the fuck out. You can't have Jalen Williams starting at the 4 for all of these games, particularly at the level of intensity and just diversity of opponents as the playoffs. I'm sorry, that's just not a sustainable tactic. Obviously, they have guys like Kenrich Williams and Jalen Williams, and these are guys that obviously fit into the system, but I'm, again, not super sure about the defensive potency there. And that's why I still feel like Oklahoma City still has holes to plug in its 3, 4, and 5 positions, particularly when you think about the matchups, whether it's going to be trying to guard out on the perimeter against Karl-Anthony Towns, PJ Washington, are you going to be able to close out effectively? Are you going to be able to put up with the wildness of Karl-Anthony Towns and whatever, where he's constantly putting you on the brink of offensive fouls or defensive, that's crazy. But then you also have Aaron Gordon, who's just a walking bomb ready to detonate at the rim at the slightest moment of hesitation from, the best passer we have in the game right now. That's ultimately why I view that stretch 4, or just call it the 4. I think that is the most coveted role in the league right now. That's why you saw all of the buzz about, oh my God, Lauri Markkanen would be amazing on this team. Why? It's because he's huge and he stretches the floor and he's mobile. He's a serviceable enough defender who, again, with his size and length, is able to match up effectively with these other diverse but also very effective power forwards in the Western Conference. This is why guys like Tatum are really, 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 really important. Overall, when you think about Caruso just jumping into whatever the lineup is, the signal that it makes to me is Boston level of arms race. The Celtics getting Jrue Holiday, in my opinion, catapulted them above everybody else for this specific postseason. Porzingis wasn't going to be healthy at all this postseason, but fortunately for them, they didn't even need him. There was no Embiid, there was no Giannis, there was no Jokic. It didn't matter. And so by default, it became a Jrue Holiday-driven postseason run. I mean, they needed him against the Luka and Kyrie. Yes, Derek White is great. Marcus Smart was also great. But Drew's championship pedigree and experience, his ability to be that release valve for Tatum and Brown, the steely resolve, the offensive rebounding, reading, responding to the game, not missing open threes, able to even hit off the dribble, through all that stuff that Marcus Smart did not have the trust of his teammates, clearly, as well as pretty much everybody at that point, I think rightfully so. Caruso kind of is that piece for them because they have Dort, essentially the Derek White of the team. He's already been there. He's a proven defensive stopper. He's somehow still really underrated defensively. I definitely is going to change next year. But now they put this last infinity stone for their defensive system and apparatus into place. And now I really, really just think it's about the four. And I don't think anybody's surprised by that. This is, in a nutshell, what this trade symbolized. More defensive potency from the jump. Let's just call it what it is with Josh Giddey. Sorry, bud. But importantly for OKC is switchability. So defensive potency and switchability. We need better defenders and guys who are able to defend more positions effectively. Those guys also have to be able to space the floor to allow us to initiate and drive kick and propel this whole system and eventually generate a very high-quality shot, particularly for an undersized team where you can't afford to miss a lot of shots because you're not going to get rebounds. They need to be able to hit the shots when they get the kickouts, and if they're the ones at the end of the play with the best shot, they need to be able to hit them, but then they also, if they're not getting a good enough look, they need to be able to initiate. And so that is the whole thing. So we have more defensive potency and switchability, space to attack, and then the offensive balance and sustainability for the team, meaning everybody's a threat, both from the outside and off the dribble, makes it more balanced, but also more sustainable. How many times did we see, I'm sorry, the Celtics blow a game open, and then all of a sudden Jason Tatum scores like 8 points in 2 minutes? It's like, oh, okay. My turn? Okay, I guess I'll just go ahead and do that. Well, that's really fortunate because the previous quarter and a half, Derek White has been white hot and just burning guys alive from the three-point line. Same with Jrue, same with Jalen in transition. And so I just say all this to say that is what you need. You need a self-sustaining system with more threats from every direction. And so again, with that golden role of that stretch 3-4 or 4-5 guy, that is where problems arise with your Denvers and your Lakers and your Minnesotas and your Memphises and your Dallases. And so, yeah, I think overall, Caruso is the Jrue Holiday for this team. I think he's like the last defensive infinity stone for their wing perimeter defensive apparatus. They are going to need that bigger wing infinity stone / center to really just round it out. To Boston's credit, they had already had this last piece in Jason Tatum and his ability to flex between that 4 and 5 depending on the matchup, and he can do everything else that I've already outlined. We will see. This is definitely a great move for Oklahoma City, and it's still yet to be written. All right.